Rule number one, don't open the door.
I need a little more up top and a little less down below.
Amber alert. Oh God, something's going to happen. Something's going to happen. Something's going to happen. In orbit of Uranus,
It smells.
I don't even want to talk about it.
Oh, no, you love me. You know you love me.
Just don't let it touch the
You know, that's great, but give me a little more.
Why? Why are you shooting at me?
You can't start the car. Johnny has the keys.
Hello, hello, and welcome out there in podcast and YouTube land. You have reached Johnny Has the Keys, hence these wonderful logos that we have. A little podcast and YouTube channel where two guys talk about horror, science fiction, films, television, key elements of a particular topic, and then things that in turn that topic influenced. We've been doing it for quite a few years now. We got quite a few seasons and we love it, and we're so glad you found us. If you're new and you found us, we'd love to find out more about you. Leave a comment down below. Tell us what you think of the episode. Maybe subscribe, link, do all those things that people ask you to do. If you are rejoining us, so glad you came back. We are nearing the end of this season and we've got some great films coming up and some interesting stuff that's happening, and we're just excited to be here. It's been crazy. I want to introduce my co-conspirator, Tim. Tim, how you been? What have you been doing?
Oh, I've been well. We usually talk about something we did in our genre week this week.
Yeah.
And I started out thinking I was doing something that was in my genre week, and it really wasn't. I watched a little movie called School's Out on Shudder.
Alice Cooper's life story. No.
Well, it's not a good title. First of all, it's a French film, so it's a foreign language film.
Okay.
And it's more of a thriller than a horror movie. However, and I'm going to butcher this, the original title was L'heure de la sortie, which actually means exit time. So that would have been a better title probably than School's Out.
Yeah, I would think.
It has some strong ties to some things we've seen. It reminded me a bit of Village of the Damned because only the kids are older. They're like high school age. But basically, the synopsis is a replacement teacher arrives in a class of elite students after their professor has jumped out of a window. So right there, you're like, what do these kids do? He soon notices the strangely violent behavior of this united group of 6. Unusually smart and precocious, the teens spread hostility and fear across the school. Soon the teacher discovers their dark vision of a doomed future and their contempt toward the powerless adults who can no longer protect them. As far as horror, there's a lot of horror imagery, like animal slaughter, and they keep showing this really ominous nuclear plant that is right next to the school. Well, I mean, it's in the same town. So
Roma.
Yeah, so you've got some dread, I guess, from that. I still would not consider this a horror movie. It's directed by some French guy named Sébastien Marnet, who we don't know, and it's written by him and some other French people we don't know. And the cast is great, but they are also French people that we don't know. So I'm not sure I would recommend it. The reason I watched it, of course, is it got really high ratings on Rotten Tomatoes, 100%. And it was with 16 reviews. So I was like, that's okay, but I would not give it that. I would give it maybe an 80 because it is compelling, but it tends to drag like foreign films do. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So that's the best I can do, folks. Sorry for that.
Interesting. I didn't do a lot genre related. I was watching some other series and catching about some other stuff. But one of the things I did do is I'm constantly listening to my Buffy podcast. It's Buffy and the Art of Story by Lisa M. Lilly. I listen to her and she takes and examines each episode, but she does it from a standpoint of a longtime fan, but also as someone who writes novels. And so she looks at every episode from a writing critique of where is the following action? Where's the initial starting point? Where's the three-quarter twist? And it's very interesting when you examine any kind of film or television episode or whatever from those kind of bullet points of writing. And she's just now at the end of season 6. So you don't know Buffy, but it's a big deal when one of their regulars becomes a villain in season 6. And she
I've seen Buffy.
have you seen all of Buffy?
I have. Which one?
Do you remember when Willow becomes evil?
Yes,
at the end of season 6.
Mm-hmm.
It's very interesting because Lisa examined, because the season finale is a two-parter. So it's the Willow's ascension, essentially. She's killed the one guy out of the 3 who ended up killing her girlfriend. That's why how this started. And she's now ascended to full-blown witch, and she's going to destroy the whole world. And the last part, the season finale, is how do we stop her? She's so powerful, we can. And Giles comes back. It's a big deal. But it's interesting it was just been an interesting listen because Lisa takes this episode 1, and tells the 4 parts of it, where each act is and how it works. And this is where the halfway point is, yada, yada. But then she goes, this is also the 1/4 turn for the 2-parter. And she structures it like you're examining each episode, but also as a full, huge story arc in a 2-parter. And it's a very neat to do it. Like this one ends with the climax and the falling action of this particular episode, which happens to be the midpoint of the 2 story arc. And it's really great. She does subplots, she does examinations. I really like it from a storytelling point of view. So that's what I did. I listened to old school Buffy from the 90s. So
well, that's interesting because you're talking about witches. And
yes,
today
and power and controlling people and all that. So yeah, it's a good segue.
Yeah, and actually these kids that I talked about in the Schools Out were very similar. So we're covering a movie from 1967 today, hence my trippy background and David's psychedelic or background. We're covering a movie called The Sorcerers. It's from 1967. I had never seen it before, but somehow this movie had constantly been in my mind as either a recommendation or something I read about it being great. I may have been confusing it with the other Sorcerer movie that's got Roy Schneider in it. Or Scheider, Roy Scheider. But I can't remember who directed that. John Borman, maybe?
I think it's William Friedkin.
It's Friedkin. You're right. Anyway, I may have been confusing it with that. Before I go into some of my likes and dislikes about this movie, let me do a quick synopsis. I'm just going to read this so it'll go fast. A great hypnotist, Professor Monserrat, has developed technique for controlling minds and sharing the sensation of his subjects. He and his wife, Estelle, test the technique on Mike Roscoe and soon enjoy being the younger man. But Estelle soon grows to love the power of controlling Roscoe and the vicarious pleasures that he provides, including sex. How far will she go, and can the professor restrain her in time? So we basically have the main cast member in this is Boris Karloff. That's another reason why I wanted to watch it, because I like Boris Karloff. And he starts out as kind of a mad scientist, but then he becomes the anti-villain, I guess you'd say, and his wife becomes the villain. What did you think of this movie, Dave?
Well, I will preface my remarks by saying if you guys have not watched it, go watch it because we will spoil it for you. If you want to watch it and want to look it up, make sure that you watch The Sorcerers from 1967, not Sorcerers from 1977, which is what I did first. And I told Tim about this offline before we started. I spent 45 minutes watching this Roy Scheider movie. It was pretty good. Directed by William Friedkin. I was going, where's the scary coming in? Tim said
it's about a drug cartel or something, isn't it?
It's about 4 people internationally
it's
from around the world. that are all criminals that end
Yeah.
up in like Argentina somewhere. And in order to make money, they have to agree to transport an entire truckload of nitroglycerin across the jungle.
So it's suspenseful, but it's not a horror movie.
It's not a horror movie. So please make sure you watch The Sorcerers instead of that. I had naturally, due to my mess up, I had never heard of this movie before. I'd never heard anything about this movie, seen this movie, done it, nothing, whatever. I found it interesting. I saw a lot of key as in references and things in it, which we'll get to, but to me, it was just a very erratic feel to this movie. It was very slow. It felt very guerrilla filmmaking, like they didn't really know what the scene was going to be, but we're just going to shoot it because we're in a club. And I need you to write something on a napkin and give it to him by the end of this scene. So I'm not sure how polished the script was. How I did see in researching it that it was actually Karloff's thought that he didn't want to be the villain. He wanted to he wanted to not be the bad guy in it, and that's why they bumped up Estelle's part in it
But
and
he
made her the
agreed to be
villain.
the bad guy for a little while. Like
Well,
at the
he portrayed it much more as he's the obsessed scientist,
yeah,
which I think he did fairly well, but we, knowing Karloff, expect him to be the bad guy.
right.
And then when suddenly he's not, and you're going, oh, okay, yeah. But then again, there's not a lot of conflict and tension there, you
No, she
know?
basically becomes addicted to his results. And he sees that and then tries to stop her because she all of a sudden becomes the villain.
She's a
Uh,
sociopath, yeah. So
right.
yeah,
Yeah,
there's that.
she likes getting in fights and murder and sex and stuff. And
Yeah,
she lives and controls Mike Roscoe with those actions, basically. She makes him kill people.
yeah. And this
Yeah.
has that very 60s issue that's hard for them to do, where if you're dealing with mind control or trying to get into somebody's mind, you basically spend the photography doing two close-ups of people being very intense and staring at each other.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of that doesn't really build tension. Okay.
It doesn't build tension, and neither does what a lot of 60s, late 60s movies also put in, which is terrible music and
Oh my
psychedelic
gosh.
effects, which are
Yeah.
just, it just gets a little monotonous.
Yeah. This struck me as definitely a drive-in movie. That had the
Right.
feel to me.
And the
It was
second feature,
yes, it was a B movie,
yeah.
drive-in movie. Yes, yes.
It was directed by Michael Reeves. I know who Michael Reeves is because he did a movie called Witchfinder General.
Wait, isn't that not Boris, the other one? Isn't
Vincent
that Vincent
Price.
Price?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's funny. You asked me the same question when I brought up a witch movie on that top 5 we did.
I just remember him being like a Puritan witch hunter and he was mean.
That is
And
exactly what it
really,
is.
okay.
And it's called The Conqueror Worm in the US because they were trying to get that tie with Roger Corman and the Poe movies or whatever, I guess.
Okay.
Because doesn't Poe have like a
Conquer.
poem maybe called that? I
Yeah.
can't remember.
I
Anyway,
think it's a short story, but
maybe. You may be right.
I'm going to ask Mike Flanagan.
But Michael Reeves, that's the only other movie he's really known for. He did other movies, I'm sure, but that's really the only movie he's known for. He suffered depression and insomnia, and he died of an overdose of barbiturates combined with alcohol. But apparently that was not suicide. It was accidental. I don't know. Anyway, so he has this movie really and Witchfinder General to his credit. And I find Witchfinder a little bit better than this. He wrote the movie along with a guy named Tom Baker, who also worked with him on Witchfinder General. And it's based on an idea by somebody named John Burke. So that's what I have for background information. Did you have any that you could add?
That was it. I mean, in research on it, it was because I had one of my original creation notes was, or watch notes was this shot in like a weekend? Feels like it was shot in a weekend.
It does. And like that scene with Boris Karloff going into the pharmacy or whatever that store is at the beginning reminded me of Basket Case, where it's like, did they just film that in front of that store without telling them?
As far as I know, yes. Based on the research, they said that to save money, a lot of the sets are actual locations. So like when they're in the bar, the underground dance bar, that's a real bar. So really the only sets they had to make were terrible. Like the one in your picture, the laboratory set, which is basically 3 walls, a door, a tape machine, and a slide projector.
Yeah. I mean, it's like his lab is a room in their apartment.
Yeah, it was
basically
terrible. It was, but yeah, like the shops, the bars, the motorcycle, the whole chase was done without any permitting and without helmets. They just drove and went and did it. And I was
Man,
like,
it's the
yeah,
60s.
you
Free
can do
spirits.
it, man. Free, do it, man. Come on.
All right. How about scenes? I have a scene that I'm going to mention because it bothers me.
Okay.
The very first scene where Boris goes back to his apartment and you meet his wife. What is his wife's name?
Estelle. Yeah.
Or something. Why can't
Something
I
like
find
that.
her in here?
I think
I
it's
don't have-
Estelle.
All right. Anyway, he goes back to the apartment and then he stops and stares at a door intently for like a really long time. And you're like, what is he looking at?
Yeah.
And I guess it's to show you, ooh, there's a menacing lab on the other side of that door, which is not menacing at all.
That's where the creature is. He's in there.
Well, that's exactly what I thought. I was like, what
I
are they
did
keeping
too.
in there?
I thought
But
that's where the evil is.
It was a
No.
tape recorder and like a projector and a mixing
Tape
board.
recorders and a mixing board. And okay, so scenes, I would think the scene where Estelle destroys the lab is terrible.
Yeah, all
It
our scenes
really
are going to be
is.
bad. That's funny.
The scene where my struggle scenes, I guess, are I did actually like the scene where they perform the hypnosis for the first time, not with him. Once he's gone, and he and Estelle sit down and they have their hands out and they're like,
It's like
let's
a
see what we can
seance.
do. And the
Mhm.
way they did that and shot some of his shots of like up above them, looking down, or their eyes. I mean, that sequence worked to me.
Mhm. They're trying to
But
maintain contact with Mike. Yeah.
yeah, but like the big scene where there's the fight at the garage, the scene goes on way too freaking long. And it's like, okay, I get it. Are you trying to? And if it had some like gory ending or something, I would say, okay, I buy it. You went that long because he was going to be crushed by the car or whatever, but nothing happened. And you go, okay. And that scene bothered me.
No, I get it.
I just there wasn't a lot of imprint in this. I was kind of watching it going, I'm waiting for that cool scene or that neat dialogue or that whatever, and it never got there to me.
Here's something that imprinted on me, but it's not going to really affect you at all. But I have talked about, and I can't remember the exact name, but when I was a kid, I had this big green hardback book. It was green because the slipcase was green. And it was like a pictorial history of horror movies. And it had pictures and there were a few inserts that were in color. And I mentioned this when I talked to you about that Roddy McDowall movie called It! Exclamation point, and it had that golem with the pointed looking head carrying that woman.
Yeah.
And I said I finally found the movie that's from because I had seen that picture in that book. Well, in this movie, at the end, when they burn up in the fire and it shows their charred corpses on the floor, that picture is in color in that book too. And I never knew what it was from.
There you go. Makes sense.
So I was like, okay, I have seen 2 movies within a year's time that were movies I had seen pictures from as a child. So that scene imprinted on me. When at the very end,
I wonder why the authors of those books picked those images.
I don't know. I'm going to find that book. I don't have it anymore, but I can probably buy one on eBay. It was a very popular book in the 70s, I'm sure. It was just a
Okay.
big oversized thing. It'd probably be on the remainders table now these days. But
Interesting.
so to spoil it, folks, Mike is not a bad guy. They just basically control him and turn him into a murderer, or Estelle controls him and turns him into a murderer. And then he gets in a car chase. And at the end, the car flips, catches on fire and explodes. They cut to the apartment, and both Boris Karloff and Estelle have been burned up. They're black.
Because
Black and
they
charred.
feel what he feels, which was, again, a nice concept, but not sure where that's going to go or how they do it. Here's some of my watch notes that show my confusion. It says, there's really not enough information here to create suspense. It just keeps doing the close-ups. I'm not sure how they control him. Can they make him do stuff? Obviously, but then do they hear what he hears? So, like when the girl says slow down on the motorcycle, do they hear that? Does Boris Karloff even like this at first? I don't understand. He seems to like it, but then he doesn't. So those are just my notes. So, and it was that, to me, it was that convoluted. I mean, I think we could see Karloff's change. And when he said, Estelle, you've gone too far and this is too much and we need to stop. And she's like, and suddenly she becomes the mean one going, you think you could stop me? I'm more powerful than you.
And she takes his cane away and knocks him down on the floor, and
then
she's
ties
like
him to the
horrible to
credenza.
him.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then she like secures him or whatever. But then later she's like giving him food. Like, oh, I'm not going to kill you. I'm just going to give my husband some food. She brings him a plate. I'm like, what? Is she holding him hostage?
Yeah. And I thought what might be interesting is if that suddenly, what I was thinking would happen was she had to have him. They have to both be able to create the link.
Oh, that makes sense. And he also is the one that had the equipment and knew how to do it in the first place. So,
right. So
yeah.
I think maybe that was going to happen, but no. And then I thought, oh, she's going to have Mike come back and kill him. And that way she can get away with murder, da, 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 da. But instead she has him kill his ex-girlfriend. And then she has him go and, well, first she robs
kills
the fur.
The singer of that band too. Yeah.
Yeah, the fur is the first thing, right? That's when they do it.
That's what she wants, a fur coat. So she makes him steal a fur coat.
Then they make him beat up his best friend.
In the garage.
Then steal his friend's motorcycle for a joyride. Then kill the ex-girlfriend. Then kill the singer. And then have a car chase.
Car chase at the end. Yeah. You just keep reminding me of keys. I got to jot down or I'm going to forget.
Also, I think because they were doing such guerrilla photography, the sound in this is really bad.
Yeah.
The sound
Honestly,
in the clubs is mixed wrong and bad.
Really bad.
Yeah. Well, lighting, production.
Yeah. It was not what I expected. And I mean, it had come, I can't remember why I always thought I need to do this movie. One of the reasons was because I had never seen it. So I was like, well, I want to see it. We'll just do it on the show. But I just had no idea that it would be this awful. And it is.
We're going to have to do a redux of this and Fantastic Planet. There you go.
No, those movies can go up on the shelf and we never have to pick them up again.
That's the two that's my regret and your regret.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can't think of any other scenes except for that scene where they're hypnotizing Mike for the first time and they basically focus on his face for like 10 minutes with that weird psychedelic Rorschach pattern on it.
Yeah.
That's
the slide projector on his face. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's the only other scene I can remember really that stuck out to me because it lasted way too long.
I had a question. Was this, I mean, it's near the end, I'm assuming, of Karloff's career. Was this his last movie?
Wow, that's a great question, and I don't have the answer.
Okay. I just didn't know if it was or not.
I can't remember when he died. I mean, it was around the time he was doing Thriller, I would think. His last movie was 1971, so no.
Okay.
And these are horrible movies. He did The Crimson Cult, which I actually have and haven't watched yet. Fear Chamber, Macabre Serenade, Island of the Snake People, and Alien Terror were his last 5 movies. And those were all shot from 68 to 71. So no, he did It looked 2, 4, 6, 8. He did 9 movies after this, but it's because he
Wow.
wasn't getting any money. Universal wasn't paying him royalties on anything, I'm sure. Anyway, we like Boris, so I always watch things he's in, whether they're good or bad. So that's me.
Yeah, I think Boris performance-wise is great in this. He's good. I still have never thought that Boris Karloff was as good as like Vincent Price. And I think the movies that we have watched have shown that. I don't think he was ever as, I think Vincent had was much
Range.
better as an actor and much more range.
Yeah.
But I do think Boris is really good in this. I think Estelle, the actress who plays her, she's really good in this
She is.
too.
Yeah, I thought so
Um,
too. Of course, a lot of these people are British that just do British films, so we don't really know them. So that's a good segue to cast, actually.
okay.
And I'll give you what I do know about them, which is not much. Boris Karloff, as you mentioned, is most famous for playing the Frankenstein monster in 1931,
Hmm.
or Bride of Frankenstein in like 1935, I think. Along with fellow actors Lon Chaney, Bela Lugosi, and Vincent Price, he's recognized as one of the true icons of horror.
Hmm.
Out of those, I would say you're right. Vincent Price is probably the strongest of the 4.
Well, Peter Cushing is probably the best.
Then you're going overseas, but I was
Yeah,
doing
I know.
Americans. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, no. Bela Lugosi was Hungarian, so
Hungarian.
yeah, I think he was Hungarian. Anyway, so he plays Professor Marcus Monserrat, which is a French name, if I'm not mistaken.
It is.
And see, it goes right to Nicole. I don't see that I have Estelle in my casting notes. That bothers me.
Interesting.
How did I miss that?
I don't
Anyway,
know.
Elizabeth Ursi played Nicole. She was the young woman. This one right here behind me.
Yeah.
And I just have that she has 13 credits and nothing I know. Ian Ogilvy, though, who played Mike, has done a lot of stuff. He was in I, Claudius. He was in Death Becomes Her with Bruce Willis and Meryl Streep. The only thing I know that connects him is he is also in Witchfinder General with Vincent Price. So he is,
Okay.
yeah, he is
Interesting.
in Michael Reeves' other movie. Victor Henry.
Catherine Lacey is Estelle. Catherine Lacey's her name.
Well, thank you
You
for
want to look
pulling
her up?
that up. But they must
I
have
looked
billed
her up.
her really low because I didn't have her in my cast list. Victor Henry played Alan. He's the guy that works at the garage that gets beat up. He only has 14 credits and nothing I know. He was cast on short notice, replacing an actor that had to drop out. He's in that picture behind me as well. I put a note in here that he died in 1985 when he was 42 years old. He was
Wow.
walking down the street when a car crashed into a lamppost that fell on his head. He was in a coma for over a year and died without regaining consciousness.
Wow.
I know. See, I do some deep dives to give you some information, folks, on these cast members.
Obviously. Dang.
Yeah. Sally Sheridan played Laura. She was billed as Danny Sheridan. Her name is Laura Ladd, and she is Nicolette Sheridan's mother.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
That I thought was an interesting connection. Also married to Telly Savalas at one time, 35 credits, nothing major. So
Okay.
she was married to Kojak briefly. Alf Joint. That's a crazy name. ALFJOINT.
Yeah.
Played the mechanic, Ron. He was actually more of a stuntman, and he was in Superman. He looks a little bit like Terrence Stamp, so I'm guessing he was Zod's stuntman.
Probably.
He was in Outland, and he was in Goldfinger. All movies that may have been filmed in England. I don't know.
Most of them were, yeah.
Yeah.
Pinewood.
And then Susan George is in this movie. Susan George was in Straw Dogs. She played Audrey. She must have been in the background because I don't remember seeing her at all. She's got
I don't
blonde hair.
either. Yeah. And Susan George she was in Straw Dogs. She's in Mandingo, for God's sake.
And she was in Dr. Mary and Crazy Larry.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, she
She
played
had a
Audrey
big,
Woods, so she was a background character. And then
okay.
Inspector Matalon, yeah, Inspector Matalon was played by Ivor Dean. I know him from Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde, but this film features him. He appeared regularly in the original Saint with Roger Moore
Oh,
and Ian Ogilvy, who also appeared in The Saint and the reboot Return of the Saint. So, like I said, there's a lot of British folks in this, and they are known, but mainly for British television, I would
yeah.
venture to guess.
Makes sense. Makes
Awards.
sense.
How many awards do you think this movie won?
It won all of them, all the ones that it qualified for. No, I have no idea.
Did you say Catherine Lacey played Estelle?
Yeah.
Well, she won the Best Actress award at the Trieste Film Festival for her role in this film.
Well, there you go. As she should. I think she lives there, and that's why they gave it to her.
Yeah, I've never heard of the Trieste Film Festival, and I may want to look that up.
I guess.
That's all I have on cast and awards. Before we move on to
Wow.
keys, do you have any trivia?
No, no last trivia. I did. It's just more of an aesthetic, and actually, it's a pretty good segue to keys. I think, and I need your help. When was Dario Argento's heyday? Was that 60s or 70s?
70s
So, because one of the
and
first keys I
80s.
wrote, one of the first keys I wrote down was Clockwork Orange. This whole youth culture being violent, and this kid who is pre-programmed to be this way. It's kind of the alternate Clockwork Orange. And I thought, wow, so this guy was really influenced by Kubrick, da, da, da. And then looked it up and went, oh, wait, Clockwork Orange wasn't until 71. This movie came out in 67. So I was going, wait, so maybe Kubrick was influenced by this movie to do the whole mind control conditioning. And then I thought, Dario Argento, because it has that feel to it. It has that urban guerrilla filmmaking feel of like Suspiria or
I don't think Dario did a lot of guerrilla filmmaking, though. I mean, he had the clout to make stuff.
I know, but it has that. It's kind of like when we did Demons, and I said the same thing. Demons had that same
I think the
foreign
connection, yeah, it's a foreign
feel.
film connection. Yeah.
Yeah, like the whole sequence robbing the store took like way too long, but was shot in really weird angle with lots of light over in the
Him
background, and
tiptoeing around that cop that was
yeah,
popping in. Yeah.
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 So that's where I think I took the note, but that had the feel to me. But then, like you said, Argento was 70s and 80s, so maybe he was influenced by
Well,
this aesthetic.
I will actually add that it's got a giallo feel. I mean,
Oh, I had
a
that
giallo
too.
feel because there are just senseless murders in it,
Hmm.
which is basically mysterious murders, I guess would be a giallo mystery. And this is a mysterious murder because she is actually controlling him and making him do it. It's just got a supernatural twist.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And I really would have gotten that more had they had the inspector a little bit sooner in it during the investigation. But yeah.
Oh, and by the way,
Agreed.
this movie is not on the 1001 movies you must see before you die.
It's not?
No, it's not. Did you have any other trivia?
No other
We've kind
trivia.
of been bleeding into keys anyway, so I will go ahead and start. I mentioned it and I will mention it again. Basket case. Like
Oh
you
yeah.
said, when they're on the streets,
Total
it
feel.
feels like they don't have a permit and they're just running around trying to grab shots.
Total feel.
So a basket case is what jumps to mind, but I'm sure there's other films like this that we've talked about.
Well, even Phantasm and a couple of others that all had that feel of we're shooting this on the weekend. I have a big classic key, which is Lady Macbeth.
Yeah, I had that too.
Yeah, she reminds me of that kind of manipulate it first and then suddenly take control and see your husband as the weakling and all of
Yeah,
that.
she basically tells him what he's going to do.
Oh, yeah.
And that's
And
exactly
says
what
you
Lady
can't
Macbeth.
stop. Yep, yep,
Yeah.
yep, yep.
Yeah, that was one of mine as well. Another one I have, and technically this could be a plethora of films from the late 60s, but the one I thought of was Easy Rider, where
Yes.
they do all the weird psychedelic dance scenes and they're on a motorcycle. I mean, that's all in this movie. Same thing, same time.
It's like an LSD reefer madness thing. It has that feel to it too. Treating the youth like they're uncontrollable, like they do their own thing. They go clubbing every night and it's horrible and terrible. Where me and Estelle just sit here in our little nice cozy one bedroom looking down. I guess what I'm trying to say is looking down on the youth sort of feel, which is a very Reefer Madness feel to me.
I have a couple that are a stretch, but not really. I'm just trying to make the connection. I put down The Invisible Man because he went out and tormented people when he was invisible.
Yeah.
The original Invisible Man that we covered a couple seasons back. And that's basically what she's doing.
Me.
Yeah, and he was killing people. He killed thousands of people. And that's what Estelle's doing. She just kills two.
Yeah.
But it's very similar. She's controlling somebody. She's not invisible. Well, she's invisible, but who she's controlling is not.
Mm-hmm.
But then also mad scientist films. The first one that pops to mind is Dr. Phibes, and it's not as good as a Dr. Phibes movie because Dr. Phibes always had really elaborate plots for revenge. This is just, I don't know. I mean, technically, Invisible Man's a mad scientist too.
But I think you're more in line of the mad scientist a la the Frankenstein, creating a creature you can't control. Mm-hmm. He created not only Mike, but his wife too. And he can't control her anymore. And that's why he becomes the suffering scientist, the sympathetic character, which I thought was a really cool idea. I just wish they had played with it more. And I wish they'd had an easier way to communicate, I guess, the technology. I mean, we get the close-up of the scar, of the cut on his hand, meaning, okay, if he gets hurt, we get hurt. Okay, we got that trope. We can handle that. But, like, they could have played the whole sex angle. Estelle really likes when he gets sexual with his girlfriend because she feels all of that. There's one scene, it's like her third big exclamation scene where she talks about the power. I think it's after the motorcycle. And she talks about how it felt. Have you ever felt speed like that before? And how amazing, and I think we needed a little bit more of that to show her obsession with what she was doing. Enough so that she trips and ties up her husband of obviously 50 freaking years.
Right. I mean, all of a sudden they're like enemies. It's weird. I think Frankenstein's a good example because there's the connection of him being the monster anyway. So Frankenstein would definitely be a key. But it's a key not only to Boris Karloff, it's a key to mad scientists.
Yeah. And to mad scientists who lose control, who have one intent, but then the monster takes it in a different way. Sort of thing. They lose control of their creation. So.
Yeah. But I don't really have any other keys, do you?
I don't either. No, I mean, let me double check my list.
It's just a very strange movie. I will say one thing. Before I watched this movie, I read some reviews of it. And one of them said, treat it like a horror movie. Just go in and don't expect anything else. And you'll see it's a good movie. And I was like, I don't buy that. It's not that good.
It's not a horror movie. No.
Yeah. They just said, treat it like a horror movie and you'll enjoy it, basically. And I was like, no, not really.
Well, and I'm sure we could Google horror movies of 67 and there will be a lot better ones than this.
Well, we're about to do a top 5 of that here in the future. Or actually, it may have already aired by now, but we'll know because I'll let you know.
Well, you'll let us know. I know. Interesting. Well, I guess
folks, that sums it up.
We're not recommending this really as one of the better ones we have ever done and or that Boris has ever.
I mean, if you're a Boris Karloff completist, I recommend it.
Yes, of course, that would work. Then, but that's what we think. We would love to know what you think. So please leave a comment down there below. Did you like this movie? What are we missing about it? If you did like it, help us learn and explain this to us.
Please help us.
We'd appreciate you, of course, liking, recommending, starring, giving us a review, especially if you can go on Apple and give us a review. It helps us get a little bit more scope and more people out there listening and watching for us. And make sure you tell your friends. We have a website. You can go back and see all of our catalog of the past 6 seasons and all of the films that we have covered, including double features, audience choices, all that kind of stuff. And we also have a Patreon that you can support us on, and we could really use your support. Please, if you have any residual income, like $1, you would like to spare for us, we would appreciate that. And you get some special bonus content depending on what tier you pick in Patreon, of course. And Tim, I guess that's all we've got this week until next week.
Well,
And,
speaking
next
of
week's
double features, we have 2 coming up.
next
one in
week is a big
sci-fi and
double
one in
feature.
horror.
Yeah. And I'm curious, have you watched next week's yet? Are you
I
ready?
have.
Had you seen them before?
No.
I can't wait. Okay, I'm curious. Yeah.
Let me say, they're a little depressing.
Yeah. So tune in next week and bring your blanket and your whoopee and anything you might need to pacify you, because it'll be pretty depressing next week.
But I'm not saying they're bad at all.
No, not at all. Not at all. All right. So Tim, until then, I guess we'll see you next time.
All right. We'll see you then.
You can't start the car. Johnny